So I think I'm finally at the point now to start showing off a little bit of what I have here. I've been working on a game for about 7 months now. I've been internally calling it On a Dream, but I just came up with Eldevar Online just to have something that's not so placeholdery. Still placeholder, but anyways, it's a 2D MMO inspired by classic WoW, old school RuneScape, and then a mobile MMO called IMO World of Magic. Open world game. Right now there's just one zone that's nearly content complete. Systems complete, or the game is basically systems complete. It's just mostly content now. There's 11 classes. I'm not going to go through all of them, but I'm just going to keep playing Reaper here while talking about some of the systems that are in the game. So spawning in, this is the starter area. It just gives the idea that you come in on a boat. Standard MMO progression here where you just pick up quests and go through and kill mobs. The overall philosophy of the game is very similar in scaling to classic WoW, where you can do small damage early on, and as you progress, you get more and more damage. But the numbers are also staying small, right? So there's not going to be a point where you're hitting for 10 million or anything like that. The open world is kind of a mix of just like the standard kind of round doing fetch quests, kill quests. Also events, there's world bosses, which I won't, maybe I'll show near the end. Fully complete yet, they're implemented, but they're not like what I would call like a polished fight. And then there's also dungeons. My plan here is to have 2 different dungeons. We have one complete right now, or feature complete I should say. We're still working on the actual dungeon. That's a bandit dungeon, and then I'm thinking about making a introductory dungeon as well, just to kind of the idea of threat and playing in group mechanics. Target platform for this is mostly going to be mobile. I mean, people can play it on PC, but the idea is to launch it on mobile and to have like an actual open world MMO experience that's on mobile. This is a full MMO. Maybe at the end too, I will also include some performance testing just so you can see that, but I tested it with 5,000 people on the server. So the game is channeled. It's like similar to BDO, right? So I can hop and then we'll see we're in channel 2 now. You can hop again. Oh, and the mobs are going to be on the same spot because the channels aren't alive until there's at least one player in them. So you hop here now, different channel. So that's the way the game's working. So there's 300 people in each channel. 300 or 400, I can't remember what I have the cap at right now. And each zone has its own channel. So like people within channel 3 can be in the forest, 300 people can be in the swamp, 300 people can be in the Badlands. Those are kind of the quests that I have, or the 3 zones that I have right now. Both are just really rough outlines, the swamp and the Badlands. The forest is the one that's actually polished. We are going to start playtesting here soon, which is the main reason why I'm making this video, to start kind of about the game. And the playtest will just be for the forest area and kind of feedback there and seeing how people feel about it. So you can see here, completely customizable characters, a bunch of different pieces of gear. Right now there's 24 sets of armor in the game from all kinds. And there's 38 weapons in the game. I can't remember the exact number. Somewhere around 40 weapons in the game. So there's a lot of ways to customize your character. There's different armors. The sacrifices that you kind of make in 2D is, if you want 2D to be fully customizable, you need to do modular design if you don't want to lose your mind. So it's modular. The NPCs are modular. All the equipment's modular. A couple of things too, actually, so you can see. So this is the female sprite, and we have a little shader that actually slims the waist down, and it keeps it on the pixel grid, which is kind of neat. So you can see this is the same chest piece on this guard, but it's slimmed around her waist just to give the female appearance. And I don't have pants. Let me go and buy pants real quick, just so I can show that. Equip these. So yeah, there you go. So you can see it actually fixes it and looks a little bit better. So it's just kind of the standard question. Oh, the one thing I didn't show, or I didn't talk about, was this. So the gimmicks, I guess you could say, is every time you level up, you get 2 stat points, and you can freely respec them. So you can put them, wanted more HP, I can put it there. If I wanted more intellect, I can put it there. Wanted more crit, I can put it into dex. So you can freely respec however you want. This is kind of what I wanted, right? I don't think you should be into playing the game a certain way, or pay money or wanting to respec or something like that. I've always thought that was stupid. One of my biggest gripes with classic WoW specifically was them not having dual spec, but I just think it makes the game more more people are willing to play content. So the game starts to open up a little bit right after the tutorial. So there's really no, like, you follow the quest chain. Events aren't fully implemented yet. Actually, I kind of skipped past one of the events. It is a little bit buggy. You will see what I mean. So this is just one of the events. This is like Escape Guy to the fishing camp. You can see it's a little bugged right now. Oh well. Yeah, spawn, and I'm gonna die here, which is not a super big deal, but that's an example of events that we have in the game. He'll die. There's also gonna be events like we're just kind of go and kill goblins, or maybe in the goblin camp there's I can show that too since I'm on the topic of it. So there is anyway another gimmick that's just kind of all over the world. There's going to be quest items just to kind of exploration. I was recently playing a game called Tainted Grail: Fall of Avalon, and they had like a corner of the map had stuff that you can run around and actually explore and see, and I love that, but I didn't like the idea of having that in an MMO. Because you can't just give players a bunch of really good stuff, you have to actually make them earn it. So I was trying to think of the best way, and I landed on EXP being the way to encourage players to want to actually explore and collect stuff. So this is a debug texture, but this is kind of, these are, calling them Apex bosses, they're group bosses, neutral, so like if players are just here questing, they're not going to fight them, as you know, kind of lore is they're looking for a challenger, right? They want to fight someone. I guess something to call out too, since you can kind of, there are bullet hell mechanics. That's kind of a lot of the mechanics are going to come from is like bullet hell stuff. At the end too, when I'm showing the bosses, it's not tuned either. This is going to be made for like the 5-player group, so definitely not going to have 18,000 HP. Kind of philosophy here is level 20, or maybe doing like VPS and level 20 is around like game-ish. Or, you know, I'm thinking at least Endgame is going to start as around level 20. It'll essentially be a fully completed talent tree. I was going to show the talent tree when I got to level 3, but I can actually just show that now. Let me die to reset all this aggro. It'll be faster than me having to run away. Cool. So let me set myself to level 3. Okay, you have 3 specializations you can choose from, so it's very similar to WoW. One kind of gimmicks you can see here. Harvester is kind of blood DK from classic WoW. It's like a tank that focuses more on self-healing rather than absorption. Wraith is like a melee DPS for Reaper, so it's like a unholy DK. And then Grave Caller is like a caster DPS. And then one of the gimmicks is you get secondary scaling on your stats. So for example, Harvester gets Intelligence as Wisdom, and also the CUIs needs to be fixed up a little bit. But you can see here, so Intelligence also gives you Wisdom, so that allows you to stack Intelligence still and then have Wisdom, which is what buffs your healing. So you're right, Dex counts as int, so if you have Dex, you're also getting mana, you're also getting the benefits of scaling. And also when you spec into something, it upgrades one of your spells and it kind of way you play. You can freely put points into whatever talent tree. You're not locked in once you specialize, but it's obviously the points here kind of built for... Funny, projectile flew all the way since I died. The points are you know, built around playing around the spec, but for some reason, if you wanted to diverge, you absolutely could. But to progress down in the tree, you have to put points there. I'm realizing now that sound effects were broken for the first portion of the game, or the first portion of the video, so turn that down. But yeah, just to give an idea of what it sounds like, it's like kind of just standard pixel, or 2D kind of old school sounds for now. The sounds are still debug. I'm gonna actually hire someone to do custom sound effects for the game, but right now we're not at that stage to need to worry about that. There's also weather, which I think is worth calling out because it's pretty nice, or at least to me. So a couple of things happen. The shader needs to change a little bit, but there's procedural animations on the grass here, and then also the trees to kind of give them the illusion that they're swaying. It's a little extreme right now. It kind of looks like it's wavy. Needs to be tuned down a bit, but that's just to kind of give the vibe of that. But yeah, the raining has a sound effect. It dims it. There's also a day-night cycle, and I also need to fix the trees. You can see there's like a weird shading underneath the trees that needs to get cleaned up. However, if I do this, set the day, you can see the shadows actually follow the day-night cycle. So if we do this, zoom out a bit, 20, 30, 40, 75, 87, and then, they fade away as night comes. I don't think I have... Oh yeah, you can kind of see it here. This is some rough VFX. Again, a little, work in progress. But this campfire here is, you can see it's kind of glowing. It lights up the player and whatnot. And I guess also to call out about this campfire, so these are another thing on the topic of exploration that I wanted to add. So these campfires are going to be scattered all around the world, with the idea that you get a very small buff when you sit at them for a couple seconds. So it's, right now it's like well rested. So this one just gives you a small amount of HP regen. I also need to fix the VFX because it's just stuck and it gets really annoying. That's why I didn't grab it earlier. So I will log out to clear this. But yeah, that's one of the other ways I'm going to get players to explore. The idea is they're strong enough to where if you're passing by, it's worth taking, but it's not worth going out of your way for. So that's kind of what I'm kind of philosophizing there. Come here and turn in this pitchfork. It doesn't chain into anything. So I guess just a couple of the extra quests before we cover some of the more technical sides is like there's gathering quest here. This guy requires certain items. So this is like a gathering quest. There's quests where you have to burn stuff, collect stuff, etc. Actually, I can show the collecting stuff or the burning stuff too because it's not gated by having the quest yet. So just so you can see, here's this. Here we can burn this. So there's quests like that where you have to run around and burn stuff at the goblin camp. So let's go and take a look at a couple of the bosses. So this is one boss. I should also add the VFX are placeholder right now, so I'll be open. That's the VFX or AI. So these need to get changed. But the idea is this is kind of a world boss. They're not always spawned. Bullet hell mechanics, it's kind of like a everyman for themselves kind of boss fight. There still needs to be a tank, but there's not like coordinated mechanics or anything. It's kind of just survive the bullet hell onslaught. Like I said too, the mechanics aren't fully done yet. But this is kind of the idea, right? And same with the tuning, right? This is just more of an idea, proving it out. I guess just technical specs about the dragon because it's kind of neat. It's like 23 pieces, I believe. I can't remember exactly how many pieces it is. And then it's totally modular. I think it's obvious that it's modular. But yeah, that is the dragon. And then we have one more world boss up here. So this is kind of like an Ent. This guy is a little bit more complete. There's still a couple of bugs with him, but the idea is this dude's just like a big Ent. When he walks around, he drops exploding mushrooms. When he's standing still, he drops a couple of exploding mushrooms. That's a self-heal, or he takes more damage when he casts that, but he also does more damage. Again, placeholder VFX. Shoots out a bunch of stuff you have to dodge. Again, it's not tuned either, so take the whole fight with a grain of salt. But yeah, that's the idea, right? So there's the two world bosses there. This cave isn't implemented yet. I'm just now starting, so I can show that at the end. But this is eventually going to be an end game grinding area. So you walk into it, it'll actually take you to a cave, or I say end game, but more of like a mid game grinding area for group grinding. So another thing that I didn't talk about either is the game is let me stop the rain. There is no penalty for like killing mobs with someone, right? So if someone's just out in the open world questing, you can kind of join them. Oh, that's too far. And quest with them without actually needing to be in a party with them, which is kind of the philosophy. I wanted players to work together in the open world, not compete with each other. So that's kind of my thinking there. So this is the first. Well, this is the first dungeon that's here, but I'm thinking this will be the second dungeon. I'm not playing the best class to kind of fight through this, but just giving a demo. So this is the first boss. It's kind of a similar mechanic to Cookie in Classic WoW. So you run over these and you either get a buff or a debuff. So here I'm dealing 15% less damage, but now I have a buff. I have a chance now where when I attack, I put a dot on them. So like that's kind of the gimmick. Sometimes they slow you, have to dodge the bullet hell mechanics, and then this dude does a self buff. The 2000 HP is more kind of in the realm of what I'm looking for. I'm looking for mainly like 30-second to 45-second boss fights, at least for this early on. Also, I need to fix the collision, the way that's set up. That's why I'm teleporting around here. 6,500. So this is going to be a mess because these don't de-aggro, but I will quickly run through and show the second boss. So this dude's the quartermaster. He has a couple of interesting... Oh, so he does it right away. So we have to go around and collect these. It gives us a small buff, and then he doesn't get a buff. If you don't collect them, he'll get a buff from that. I'm gonna die here, maybe. And then it's just pretty standard. He just has bullet hell mechanics. So you have to collect the bags and dodge the bullet hell mechanics. There is the mage boss up here, who will put runes on the ground. He does Frost Lance, which is like a beam that you have to dodge. So if that hits you, it slows you and does damage. This is a mess. Yeah, these glacial runes he'll put on the ground, so you just can't hit these. So then, the idea is that when you're dodging all these mechanics, they're on the ground, right? So when they hit you, or when you hit them, they do damage. And then the final boss is the chief. So he's kind of just the same thing. So he buffs himself. When he does this Warcry thing, we have to go and just hit it. I need to change that, so it is, you have to kill it rather than run over it, but if you don't, he gets a buff the entire time that flags out. If you run into this, it actually triggers. He has a self buff. He does a whirlwind. Let me set myself to 20. Okay, I think we're in a better spot now. I fixed it, so we should be able to get this guy down. I just wanted to show kind of the other kind of bullet hell mechanics that we have. So you run over the flag, we get a buff, or he gets a debuff when we do that. Yeah, he takes 20% more damage. His morale's hit. Get this guy down. Once he gets, there's like phases, so once he gets to half health, he'll do the additional mechanics here. He's the only one that's actually phased in here. The other bosses aren't phased. Any second now. Oh, that's a bug. That's funny. If we're right on top of him, it like does some negative displacement that needs to get fixed. Any second now, he'll spawn those axes. There we go. Okay, yes, that's another mechanic, right? Is he should spawn these axes, so you have to, it's probably going to do a figure 8 around him, so that way ranged has to worry about it too. But yeah, that's the idea there. Okay, so I just turned on the performance test here with actual spread on, so we should see here in a second they should start spawning kind of around. And let me turn this up. Yeah, so it's a little better when they're not all stacked right on top of each other. Yeah, this is actually a pretty good way to show off kind of the different armor combinations. So the guy who does my character art, he's pretty good at making modular designs, so all of the armor goes together, which is pretty cool. So like you can make basically with the 24 combinations of gear, there's like a ton of different combinations you can make with it, and you can kind of see too with the weapons and whatnot. Shields need some work with like Z ordering or the Z axis ordering and stuff like that, but this is just an example of some of the kind of armor combinations that you can see. Actually, this isn't all the armor now that I'm looking at it. There's still some missing armor sets in here that the bots must just not be looking at. But yeah, so this is kind of for mobile, right? So the idea of this is we don't want people to be suffering on mobile. Also, there's not too many scenarios where you'll be seeing a ton of people around you. So like obviously in big cities and whatnot. So I guess the custom render I'm working on, I don't know if I still have it in game. Let me see. No, I don't. So the current rendering is CPU rendering, so I was working on GPU rendering. It's just I haven't had the time, and I've been focusing more on polishing the game and working on content rather than worrying about min-maxing performance for non-existent players. So if there ends up being demand for more performance servers with 5,000 people on them, that's totally fine. Obviously, the easy solution is right. Everything's just channel based, so all I'd have to do is lock the players out. I guess I can actually show that real quick too, just to give a better idea. I'm re-kicking off the stress test, but that is the one benefit of channels, is it naturally spreads people out. I like the RuneScape approach. I've always said, why don't games do like the Black Desert Online approach, where there's just channels. I'll probably end up doing benefits because there's a guild system in the game. So, I'll probably end up doing benefits to, like, guild set a home channel or something like that, where there's, like, you get a small buff or, something like that for existing in the game. Okay, so yeah, showing the channel system with these bots in there, so you can see, like, they get populated, right? There's, like, kind of a queue in here. So if we go here, different players, this guy here, and we'll just pay attention to him, dude with the big old green axe. Yeah, so you can see it's totally different channels. They get naturally filtered out. We go here, there should be no one in here. Yeah, so this was a stress test with 400-ish players. So these are real connections too, which I guess is kind of interesting. It's a client, but it actually goes to the internet. It's not connecting on localhost. It's actually going through and doing the whole networking side of things. So it's real connections. I can show this too. This isn't super interesting. This is like the performance panel. So there's a little bit of so I recently migrated everything to mostly everything is actually raw binary. There is a couple of like JSON fallbacks in here. That's what this is. So but in terms of network performance, it is pretty lightweight. And that's, this is with seeing like 400 players. The updates are all pretty smart. There's a lot of caching that happens. Still obviously a lot of room for improvement, but with mobile kind of being my main design philosophy, or wanting to build the game around working on mobile, extremely performant on like a 3G or 4G connection is important. So you can see here, even with all these players, right, our total in is not super crazy. Where our out is next to nothing, right? We're just basically sending up our position, so the server itself doesn't get super slammed. A lot of this is just like the JSON fallback, right? And the player delta updates, that can all be micro optimized and stuff like that. But it's not like a crazy data hog, but it definitely needs to be a little bit more optimized here, especially around a lot of players. So this is still like in development. There's not a whole lot here. But I'm just going to quickly go through and show off kind of some of the cool stuff that's in the Badlands. So the environment artist, I think, killed it with the mountains. Like, they look really, really nice stacked together and whatnot, and same with all the props and whatnot. There are ogres. This is the kind of philosophy behind this zone is ogres and goblins, and then ogres are kind of pushing the goblins out. And that's why the goblins exist in the forest to begin with, is they're getting pushed out of their home by the ogres. There was an entrance here. Is it this? Well, anyways, there's nothing to show in there, but that's going to be the ogre city over there. And then to the east is where the goblin encampment will be. And there's kind of the idea here is there's going to be a little bit of a war going on. There's going to be events with supply chains. This is all work in progress, right? This isn't done. But I was just kind of showing off the art because I think she did a really good job with just everything overall. It looks really, really good put together. And then the same goes for the swamp. The swamp's going to get a total redo soon. This is the next zone, right? These are AI. That's just AI placeholders. So the idea here is all the shaders aren't going to work either. There's kind of atmospheric shaders and whatnot that should be here. The idea is zombies, necromancers, ghosts, plagued animals, stuff like that. This is all super, super rough, but just kind of more showing off the art more than anything. The tombstones aren't AI, the walls are AI, churches AI. Trees aren't AI, torches aren't AI. Some of this is AI, but anyways, just kind of giving off the vibe, right? This is going to be the second zone, and then the Badlands is going to kind of be the third zone, and then everything after that's the core game is just going to be those three zones, and then everything after that is kind of or rather the 1.0 launches is those three zones. I guess what I can do is just quickly go through all of the classes. So there's Archer. Archer is, there's two DPS specs, one with a pet, one without a pet, and then there's a tank spec. So the tank spec is kind of based around kiting. It's kind of a meme spec. It's not meant to be taken seriously, but you kind of kite and use CC on mobs to get around. Bard is very similar to like Final Fantasy XIV's Bard, where you provide buffs to teammates, you debuff enemies, A lot of it's AoE. You can heal, you can DPS. You're not good at really anything, but you're mostly support, so groups are always going to want you. Druid is very similar to classic WoW Druid. I can actually show it real quick. I'll show it in maybe a later video if there's interest. But there's shapeshifting, there's spellcasting, there's healing. It's very similar to kind of the hybrid philosophy. Mage is super standard. There are 3 specs. There's Spellblade, there's the standard caster mage, and then a healing spec. The gimmick with the mage healing spec is every healing spell except their hot has a negative debuff. So their direct heal will put a burn on the player because it's cauterize. Their shields are frost shields, so they slow the player, or they slow whoever gets the shield. So things like that to kind of give them a little flair, right? Mages can heal, but it's very rough. Necromancer has 3 specs. One's minion based, one is kind of dot based, and then they have a healing spec, which is just kind of, it's a very standard. It's basically plays like a priest, but with shadow healing. Paladin, again, very similar to classic World of Warcraft Paladin. You have Retribution, which is a 2-handed paladin who uses 2-handed weapons and like kind of slow attacks, big damage. Holy, which is like your standard. It's actually not standard. It's kind of plays like a disc priest from World of Warcraft, not classic, where they're kind of standing in melee. I guess it's similar to Holy Paladin actually, and WoW now that I'm thinking about it. But they heal on melee attack. Someone around them. They get stacks for using spells that they can spend on buffing their heals. So they're very much like an engaged healer. And then the tank is like a very similar to a WoW Paladin tank with like consecration, AoE, a little bit of self-healing, stuff like that. Priest is basically World of Warcraft's Priest. I think they nailed the Priest. There's like a absorption-based healer, direct spell-based healer, and then Shadow. It's not called Shadow, it's not a direct rip, but you can definitely see the influence. Reaper's kind of unique. It's like a mix between Death Knight and Warlock from World of Warcraft. So they have dots. They're melee. They can be caster. They kind of heal like Blood DK. It's a pretty fun class. It's a little bit power crept, I would say, not in terms of damage, but just in terms of like the actual class. But it's fine. It's the one outlier. Rogue is kind of interesting. So they have the standard dual wield one. There's a caster version of Rogue, which ends up you scale off of int instead of dex, and you kind of use poisons, so like toxic vials. You do a lot of AoE related stuff, and you end up kind of playing like a energy based caster. And then there's your standard like rogue tank, which is kind of like more bruiserish. You have ways to do more like dodging, ways to kind of avoid damage rather than take damage directly or absorb damage. Shaman is kind of similar to like a World of Warcraft Shaman, so it can heal, it can DPS, melee DPS and range DPS, and then Warrior is very similar to WoW's Warrior as well, where it's dual wield, 2-handed, and then sword and board. And then for the character creation right now, it's kind of bare bones. There's female and male, and then each one has 6 different skin colors. And then for male, there's a couple of hidden ones stuck in there. And then for the hairstyles, there's a couple of different hairstyles per sex. But yeah, that is where the game is currently at. I'm aiming to be content complete here in about the forest to be content complete in about a week. We'll see if we can make that happen. But I'm looking to start playtesting soon. So if you're interested, definitely feel free to like leave a comment or something like that, and I'll absolutely reach out. It won't be on Steam for a little bit. I want to be sure the game is like actually good, or good's not the right word, but I actually want to put in some effort externally before it goes on Steam, and I start doing that. So maybe for the early access 1.0 release with 3 zones, that's when we'll see it on Steam. But yeah, anyways, I appreciate you all for watching, and hopefully if there's some interest, I can show off a little bit more of the game.